All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so there are 37 of you already. So thank you so much. It's a Sunday evening, and 9:30 I know is traditionally quite a late kind of like time to start these kind of things, but it has been popular. And I'm also aware that many of you will have work in the morning. So this session will hopefully be really, really quick, really succinct, really valuable to you. And this is a session that has come about because of a number of people either emailing me separately via email, sending me direct messages on Instagram, or simply just commenting on the live sessions that we did hold, saying that this was a topic that you want me to cover. And I think moving forward, especially when I look at the demographic of the channel as it's changed since the beginning, since last year, I've certainly seen a huge bit of growth in the age ranges 44 to 65, I would say. We're now in the double digits. And before that was like 0.03% of the people that were watching me. And I'm thankful for all of you being here. And I want to make sure that obviously the channel is able to cater to different age groups, and we are able to provide information that is tangible and valuable to you. So this evening I'm going to be joined by a former colleague of mine. Actually, as you guys know, I've worked in the industry for 15 years, and as part of that function I've worked with financial advisors as a consultant. I worked in investment houses as well. And my guest this evening, Terry, I'll let him introduce himself shortly. He is an awesome guy. I have a saying. If you follow me on Instagram, you know what my saying is. It's all about life is about radiators and drain pipes, and essentially what that means is that it's all about life is about keeping good people around you. He operates on the same philosophy. It's all about positivity, adding value to people, and basically just being a good person and delivering great things for people who come into contact with you. He is a former actually, you know what? I'm not going to steal his thunder because his resume is actually quite impressive. He used to be an investment manager. He used to manage 200 million pounds as an investment manager for an investment house here in the UK, a very, very big name here in the UK. So when he talks about investments, the markets, pensions, all that kind of stuff, he really knows what he's talking about because he used to do it for his wealthy clients himself. So I'm more than honored to have him here this evening. He's given up his time to come and speak to us and give us some tips that will hopefully be useful to you guys. I'm going to bring him in now. His name is Terry.Michael. If you do have questions, ping them in the chat. We will try and get through them this evening, but we're just going to do an introductory phase. So, Terry, welcome, mate.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Really glad to be here. Thank you for boosting my ego in your introduction. Thank you.
Literally every time that I say this about him, because he's obviously, I have a Discord group, so in the members team there, actually, you know what, they were really impressed with you and they really, really like you. I say this all the time, but no, your resume is, and your journey into financial services has been pretty amazing. And yeah, you are where you are because you didn't just kind of like rest on your laurels, and you're very, very knowledgeable, know what you're doing. But can you give the audience kind of like a background? I really want you to cover how you actually got to be an investment manager, because it's not normal.
No, it's no, it wasn't normal. Okay, so my undergraduate degree was medical science. So what am I doing in finance is probably the first question you're thinking. But with all degrees, you can transfer and take those skills elsewhere. But I worked in a year in forensics, and after graduating, and I had to move down to London. I'm Birmingham based. That's where I'm born and live. But London was a real shock. I've heard it's expensive, but when I got down there, I realised, and the salary I was on in forensics was just not covering it at all. So I began looking at stocks and shares and thinking, "Oh, what's all this about? People make money on this, don't they?" But it was in 2008. And if you remember, we had quite a bit of a crisis in the markets in 2008. But I was only trading little bits of money and just to see, if I could do it. And I did make some money. I made some losses. I made some mistakes. And then I realized that actually I'm really enjoying it. And so I left forensics, and I started pursuing a career in financial services. And I didn't know anything about it. So I spoke to a friend of a friend of a friend, and then they finally put me in touch with somebody. And I eventually, cut a long story short, I was on work experience for 6 months with a firm, and I was working a second job at night just to cover the bills, obviously. And eventually, they said a position's opened up. Do you want it? And yes, of course, I want it. So I was working as an investment manager, which basically means it's a modern day term for being a stockbroker.
Hmm.
But you can't say stockbroker anymore because it's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Um, stockbrokers caused the financial crisis, so
Uh-huh.
nobody wants to hear that. So I was managing quite a bit of money, which you alluded to earlier in the introduction, Peter. And yeah, all sorts of clients, from your ultra wealthy to just your normal clients that just wanted enough money in retirement, and for it to be managed correctly in the markets. And it was a very intense job. Managing markets, a lot of people think it's quite easy.
Hmm.
um, it's not, and there's a lot of stress that goes with it. You need to constantly read and read and read and read. That's all it's down to. It's just reading and analyzing information constantly. Um, but then I moved away from investment management after 11 years, and I moved into financial advice because I saw that a lot of my clients were making money in the markets, which is, what I was paid to do, but they were missing out things like pension contributions,
Hmm.
inheritance tax mitigation, um, succession planning, passing money on to the next generation, and they were not getting the advice. And I really thought there's more value in this. So this is what I've moved to. So this is what I do. I structure people's portfolios. I structure their financial assets, and I guide them to their objectives, and basically just take the pressure off them so they don't have to sit there worrying. We put a plan together, and we review it constantly, and we make sure that it's in place and it matches their objectives. So I'm dealing with different sorts of clients now. I'm not dealing with just the ultra wealthy. I'm dealing with the average person that actually
Hmm.
has an interest in their finances. And I'm really impressed and pleased to see so many viewers here tonight, and so many people, joining into Peter's talks and discussions, because there's a lot of people out there that don't look at their finances. And for me, being in the industry, that's scary. You
Hmm.
need to look at your finances, even as bad as they may be sometimes. If you're not looking at them, they're not going to get better. So
Mm.
it's really good to see so many people here tonight that are taking an interest in their own finances.
Cheers. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about this evening, which has been the hot request, is I'm really passionate about pensions. I speak about it all the time here on the channel. But for the people who are in the age brackets of 40 to 50, who may be at the realization now that they haven't made pension contributions prior, they don't think that they have any pension provisions at all, and they're mindful that actually retirement is literally going to be round the corner in the next coming years. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that and maybe get your thoughts on some practical things that they can take away and essentially consider. But I think to start off with, I mean, you've been in the industry for a very long time. You've worked in pensions and around pensions for quite some time, and how their pensions interact with the markets, and how the markets are important in order to generate a healthy pension pot moving forward. What are some of the key considerations that you think are really important for people in their 40s and their 50s if they're looking at their pensions right now thinking, okay, I need to do more? What are the key considerations to start with? Where do they start?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that probably most people start to think about at the ages that you've mentioned, 40s, 50s. Um, because most people will be employed,
Hmm.
and they will have their pension paid for by their employer, and they may have a contribution with auto enrollment that came in. You have to put some money into your pension as
Hmm.
well, and it's a good thing. You can opt out of it, but I wouldn't opt out of putting money into your pension. It's a good thing. You start to think of, okay, so what is my pension worth? What does that mean for me in retirement? And it's a difficult one, because if you're not in investment management or financial planning, how do you start to plan this?
Hmm.
First question is, when will you retire? When do you want to retire? Not when will you retire, because you don't know. When do you want to retire? And a realistic number, and that's the first target. You get the number, the age that you want to retire. And what we do with clients is look at that age and we start to plan towards it. So we've got various different tools and we can plan towards those ages. But if you're looking at your pension and you think, okay, there's not enough money in there. First of all, you probably don't know how much money you need to retire on, which is most people's question. And then second of all, if you're not putting enough money into your pension, if you feel you're not putting enough money into your pension, have a look at how much more money you can put into your pension. How much can you afford each month to put away? It's very powerful, the compound interest, the compound investments that you can get on month. And let's not forget, you save a lot of tax by putting money into your pension. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, you pay 20% tax, income tax. You get 20% tax relief every time you put money into your pension, and it gets added to your pension. So on day one, the money that you put into a pension, HMRC have given you 20% growth on that money. So that's brilliant. That's day one. And then your investments can work for you. So if you can afford to put more money into your pension, do it. That would be my initial advice. I think when it comes to retirement, if you look at your pension pot, say it's 200,000, when you're taking money out each year, what people use in the industry so your money doesn't run out is a 5% rule. So basically, you can draw out 5% of your pension pot each year, and hopefully that money will never run out. Because they use 5% because on average, growth is higher than 5% each year.
And that's
That's
different because there used to be, 4% used to be bounded around. Then there was conversation, particularly when markets weren't doing too well, that, okay, well, is 4% even sustainable? Was it 3? And this really leads into the bigger question of, in retirement, you've already mentioned what is realistic for you. So when would you like to retire? But I think sometimes there's a disconnect between the expectation and the reality of what tends to happen, which begs the further question of, how much do you actually need within a pension pot if you're in your 40s and your 60s, given that people are living much, much longer now, in order to have a comfortable retirement where 5% withdrawals doesn't overextend and mean that you run the risk of your pension pot not lasting the length of your retirement, or the length of time that you're going to live for, at least?
Yeah, good questions. Let's look at what we call some cash flow planning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll show you an example of someone at the age of 40 today with a pension pot of 40,000. So, that's not unrealistic at the age of 40 if employers have been paying in. I mean, we can change all of this scenario. Everyone's case is different, and that's why it's important sometimes to get these things analysed
Mm-hmm.
individually. But let's take a person 40 years of age, a £40,000 pension today. I've also made the numbers simple. They're on £40,000 salary. So using auto enrollment rules, we're putting 8% pension contribution.
Mm-hmm.
That's employer contribution and your contribution as well into it, to the age of 68, which is the
Mm-hmm.
state pension age for someone at this age today. And let's see how this carries forward. So at the
Fantastic.
moment, here we go. If I share the screen,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there we go. Let's see if this works.
There we go. We got it up
Okay,
there. Yeah.
great. So if I move to my screen, so basically it doesn't look great. So what we're looking at here is your pension, 40,000 today, and it's moving all up. And basically, you run out of money at the age of 75. I've also put in the state pension allowance as well. So it's around it's £175.20 a week at the
Which
moment.
is like 9,100 and I think 10 or something like that, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this scenario, I've put somebody spending 30,000 a year from the age of 68. Okay, so that's not unreasonable. That's a good retirement, 30,000 a year. You know, you can do a lot with 30,000 a year, especially if your house is paid off for. But we'll get onto house payments later. I think there's an important part there. But basically, if you're only putting 8% in from your £40,000 salary, your money will run out at the age of 75. And I've done this cash flow planning to the age of 100 because that's what we do for all our clients. People are living longer, and that's a good thing, but we need to plan better for it. And it just
so I guess then the reason why you're extending to 100 is because first and foremost, we don't know how long an individual is going to live for. So 100 is a good number to stretch to. It might be 85, it might be 90 for some people. But the idea is you don't want people running out of cash before they die, essentially, which is the worst thing, really, the worst case scenario.
Well, that's the worst case scenario because you won't be able to work at the age of 75. Realistically, you won't be employed by many people, and you might be able to set up your own business. I don't know who you are and what you're about, but when we get involved with clients, we ask all these questions and we look at everything. But this is just breaking it down very simply. Who wants to go back into employment at the age of 75 because they've run out of money? I don't think anybody here listening today would want that. I'll just show you what happens if you're with a partner. Same scenario. You're a bit better off because you now have 2 state pensions coming in to your household. But still, you're running out of money, which isn't great. So then what we'd recommend here is increase your pension contributions if you can. And we'd analyze all of this and see how much you can afford. With this scenario, I am putting here pension contribution of £1,000 a month.
Okay, yeah.
This is for a single person without, one state pension allowance. Single person, £40,000 a pension. I'm recommending £1,000 a month to go into their pension. Okay, now this pension pot is now 613,000 at the age of 68. Now you can see in 28 years, £1,000 a month. Look at the growth; it's good. I think people will be pleased with that. But now you can see at the age of 100, you haven't run out of money.
There. Yeah.
That's the important part here. And in this scenario, I may even recommend more money going into the pension, just so if markets have a terrible time, we can account for that. But that's a start. £1,000 a month. If people can afford that, and this is the discussions we have. What can you afford? What can we get to? And then we'll change the retirement planning. Maybe you only spend £20,000 a year in retirement. But if you have the power to save now, do it, because your retirement should be an enjoyable time. You shouldn't be scrimping around for money at that point.
And I see that you've actually accounted for 2% inflation there, because I think that's often something that people underestimate as being a real big driving force. The fact that if you're planning 10, 15 years in the future, you really do need to consider your purchasing power and the impact that inflation has on reducing that. So £100,000 today is not going to be worth £100,000 in 10 or 15 years time when you finally get to retirement. So it's important to account for inflation in your forecasts.
Yeah, inflation is accounted for in all aspects of this cash flow forecast. It's accounted for the increase in state pension rate as well by inflation. So your state pension is being increased by inflation, but also the amount of money you're spending as well is increasing each year with the rate of inflation. So it's
Hmm.
all being accounted for, and that's important. A lot of people, as you said, Peter, they forget this. So I won't dwell on this too much, but I'll just show you the same scenario now with a couple, basically, a partner. So the state pension is doubled. This person now doesn't have to put £1,000 a month. They only have to put in £350 a month to get to
Okay.
this stage. And you can see that we've reduced the pension pot to the age of at 68. You don't need as big a pension pot because you'll be getting 2 state pensions.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing that now.
Okay. Yeah.
The risk there, though, is if, unfortunately, people die, and I see this all the time with clients. And so, if you die, then that one of those state pensions has disappeared from your household.
Hmm.
You may spend less money on your own. I don't know, but these are things that we talk about, and we try and get people to save as much as possible for the worst case scenarios. With balancing their lives now, we don't want to take away all their joys by just saving money. I see a question someone's put in there: is £1,000 a month realistic? That is a gross figure. So I mentioned earlier that when you put money into your pension, HMRC gives you 20% on top of that. So that actually from your pocket would be £800 a month, not £1,000 a month, because the government adds that 20%.
Hmm.
It is realistic for some people. For some others, it's not realistic. And that's where we talk to people and say, what is realistic? Okay, what can we do? Where can we save? Where can we add money to your pension from? And it's different stages of life. Some people are younger and they're growing, so they can't afford to put money right now. But if you're in your 40s and your 50s, you've got to try and plan for this because you're getting closer.
Yeah.
40 doesn't seem, it's not old, but if you want to retire at 68 comfortably, you need to start thinking about it now, is what I'm saying.
One thing that stuck out to me there was, for a single person, the pension contribution was £1,000 a month,
Yeah.
but for a married couple, it was 350,
Yeah. And
and that's quite a big reduction, and that maybe speaks to the merits of being in a couple, specifically. But then again, you and I both know that actually divorce rates for the older age is actually quite high as well. So that's a key consideration. I mean, how do you even legislate for that within your advice?
we basically try and get each person within the household, within that couple, to plan conduct a financial plan with us. We don't recommend just one person being in the meeting. I often have maybe the wife or the husband call me up and say, I want a financial plan, and then I find out a bit more about them and I say, would your partner be here? And more often than not say, I never thought of that. Sometimes they want to keep secrets from their partners. That does happen.
Yeah.
But if they have no problem with that, I invite the partner as well, and we look at that and we say, okay, you build up your assets and you build up your assets too. So speaking to each individual and trying to get them in a comfortable place. We try and plan for that. You can't always plan 100% for it, but we try and mitigate any risks there. And make sure that both people have some sort of plan in place. I can get into a bit more detail and share my screen again and just show you some scenarios.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, please do. Yeah, and then
So,
we'll get in.
from your,
Then we will get into your questions, guys, because I know that there are a number lining up here. So we will get to your questions as well.
Okay, great. So this basically is a summary of all the cash flow planning that I've done behind the scenes in a simple table, so you can see it. So we ran this scenario: 40 years of age, has a partner? No. There's the pension amount to start with. 0 pension contributions. Okay, that's your pension pot at age 68, and that is the shortfall at 100. If you work down the scenarios, that you can see those different scenarios playing out. I've also done it for someone at the age of 50.
Hmm.
I've done a £50,000 pension pot at the moment, starting
Hmm.
with, because they've had 10 more years to build up. So I'm trying to be realistic here. You have to put a lot more money in. You can see, if you're a single person at the age of 50, to be spending £30,000 a year to the age of
Hmm.
100. You have to put £2,000 in, and then if you're partnered up, then it's £900. So it's quite sizable. But if you're both working, then hopefully that's something that you can manage. Again, don't forget that is with the government, with HMRC putting 20% on top of your contribution. So these are higher figures than you would be putting out of your actual money.
Hmm.
But it just shows you a breakdown that if you do need to contribute regularly. Consistency is important. And there's no magic wand, unfortunately. It is putting money aside, but putting it in a tax efficient vehicle. That's what I think is important.
Yeah.
I
I
can
have a
stop
question.
there.
I have a question for you. Because I think for some people who may be watching this, may be thinking, okay, well, I don't know of any pension contributions that I have. I'm not aware of any. Like I've worked at different companies in the past, but I don't know whether I paid into a pension or not. And we both know that defined benefits are a thing of the past now. They're gold dust. I think if you're in your 50s, you probably have more of a chance of having worked in the business where there was a defined benefit scheme attached. But how do people actually go about finding out whether there is a pension pot that they are completely unaware of that may be a source of income in the future?
I've been working on a case exactly like this right now. A client is 62 years of age. And we got talking, and I said, but where are all your other pensions? And the client said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you've worked all your life. You actually worked for the NHS as well at one point.
Mm,
And so we started doing a chronology. We set up a chronology of where this client had worked over the years. They had no details. They just knew that they worked in these years. They worked at these places. So thankfully, we've got the internet now, and started looking at these companies that the client had worked at, and contacted them, contacted and told them the scenario. This person worked for you in these years. They don't know if they've got a pension with you from that period. And they'll give you details, and they'll say, okay, drop us an email tell the person to drop us an email with their name, their current address, the address that they had at the time of working here, if they've got it.
hmm.
If they haven't, don't worry. Tell them to detail their national insurance number as well, and we will track anything down that we've got. And it's you doing a bit of homework
Hmm.
and finding where those companies are and seeing where those pensions are. If those companies have closed down, then you Google and put it in there. Pension scheme for, I don't know, Laura Ashley. They've closed down, and it will
Hmm.
tell you
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
pension scheme has moved to, who's taken over that pension scheme, and then that's the company that you need to contact. It's a bit of a tedious exercise. It really is. We do it for our clients. We sit down with our clients and we do all the running around to do all of that. But if you want to do it on your own, you can. But you just need to contact them and just speak to the right person, the right department in those companies.
Yeah, because I think this is a really important thing, guys. If you are watching this and you're kind of, a little bit older and this is a really big concern for you, especially if you're in your 50s, you are likely going to have a pension somewhere that may be a final salary or a defined benefit. You need to find that pot of money. I think there was a piece of research that came out last year, and it alluded to the fact that 19.8 billion pounds is left just forgotten in pensions. Like people just don't know where they are, and that's just a function of people working in different places, moving jobs, moving addresses, not and because they move addresses, the pension scheme then has your old address. So when they send you stuff, it's returned. and you just lose track. And it's so easy to do. And it's really, really important that you don't leave anything on the table, and try to get a sight of, like what Terry's alluded to there, do a chronology of where you've worked, how long you've worked there for, and systematically try and find out, okay, is it likely that I'm going to have a pension here? Even if you think that you haven't got one, it's worth asking the question anyway, because you never know what you might find. When I was advising, I had a client very, very similar to yours. Her letters of authorities went out. It came back with 100 grand that she didn't even know she had, like 100 grand. And as you know, 25% tax-free cash straight off the bat meant that she could pay off debts, and she could actually retire 2 years earlier than she thought she could, because there was an old pension pot there in the background that she wasn't even aware of. And that can be quite powerful, because it's a massive stepping stone.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you mentioned something there that, I mean, the client that I was talking about, we found out that they had a defined benefit pension of £5,000 each year.
Wow.
Each year that she'll be getting in retirement. That doesn't sound a lot, but now if you're planning and saying, well, I want to spend £30,000 a year in retirement, well, that client has now got an extra £5,000 that she doesn't have to build up. Plus her state pension, she's got £14,000. Okay, we need to make up the £16,000 per year. Okay, well, we can do that. We it's not going to be as hard work now. She doesn't have to save as much. So it's really important to just, you worked those years. You're entitled to it. If there's anything out there with your name on it, and that's why the national insurance number works so well in these scenarios, because you said you've moved address, they've lost their details. But your national insurance number is always there. That's the important thing.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to jump into questions now. Okay. There's quite a few there. So are you ready?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, cool. So guys, we're going to get into your questions now. So if you do have any, make sure that you pop them in here. I'm just looking down the list at this point in time. We should be able to get them through. So let's go with this one first and foremost. So good evening, guys. Is it worth taking a sum of money from your workplace pension and investing into a SIPP? I'm 47.
Okay, let's just take a step back. A SIPP is a self-invested personal pension. And that term gets thrown around quite often, and it's been very popular over the last 10 years. All it is, it's just a pension vehicle. So it's a pension like every other, but it allows you to invest in more assets than other pensions. So it allows you to invest in some fancy stuff that you might not be able to invest in other pensions. So sometimes that's good. You might want that, but more often than not, most people are paying the price, the annual fee for a SIPP without needing to. So you can we'll get to the actual question in a moment, but I just wanted to cover the SIPP part. A lot of people are paying for a SIPP and they don't need to pay for a SIPP because they're not investing in anything fancy, and they don't need to, is the point. So going to the actual question, workplace pension transferring to another pension scheme. Okay, let's just take that scenario. It depends on your workplace pension. I get this all the time when we analyze clients. When they come to me, the first thing that we do is analyze all of their assets, and one of them is the workplace pension. Sometimes the workplace pension is great, and we say to clients, keep it in there. You have got a really good pension. You're very lucky. Keep it going. And we don't get a fee for that. But that's honesty. And if the pension scheme is good, keep it there. It needs to be analysed. What things to look out for in your workplace pension that make it good? The returns that you've been getting over the years, historic returns, the fees that you're paying on the pension scheme. Don't forget hidden fees. A lot of people say, oh, there's no fee, but the funds that you're actually holding, the actual investments in that pension, there is a fee for that. So look at that. Really, you need somebody to analyze it for you. It's difficult to analyze it yourself because where do you start? Are you going to transfer it to a pension elsewhere and manage it yourself? I wouldn't recommend that because you've got your day job, unless you're a professional. then this is your pension. You know, it's not a hobby. It's not a side pot of money to have fun with. This is important. Other than your house, this is probably your biggest asset. So I would get it analyzed, and I'd get it analyzed by somebody that does it for free. I wouldn't be charged. We don't charge to analyze people's assets, and we give people a report, and we don't charge for that report. So if anybody's charging to do some analysis, some people do, but you know, you can get it analyzed. If they're charging more than £500, I would be asking why. There's people out there that will do it for less, and there's people out there that will do it for free. So get it analyzed. That would be my question. And a lot of times it is worth doing, I find, because a lot of the workplace pensions are historic pension schemes, and they don't offer the flexibilities that other pension schemes do offer. I've gone into an array of things there. I don't know if I've helped.
No, I think that's really important though, because you know, you're right. The term SIP does get thrown around quite a lot, without really that much context as to what a SIP is. You know, you have to make sure that a SIP is going to be suitable for you. So, are you going to be putting a commercial property within your pension fund? If you're not, then you probably don't need one, period. Are you going to be investing in anything that's exotic or out of the ordinary? If you're not, then you don't need one. I mean, SIPs will carry extra charges, so and you would expect that because they allow you to invest in things that aren't traditional in the traditional sense. So a lot of people talk about SIPs, but you need to ask the question of, is it appropriate for you? That's the most important thing as well in there. So I just thought I'd elaborate on that. There is another question. Before we get into the next question, guys, there are 152 of you on here. There's only 46 likes right now. So can we please get those likes up? It will help me massively with the YouTube algorithm, and it will really help me get this video actually ranked after this live has ended, so that other people like yourself get to see it as well. So let's see if we can get that up to, well, 53 right now. Thank you. Let's see if we can get up to 70. Let's go to the next question. Right, I have a pension shortfall following recent DB scheme closure. I'm now 56. I want to retire in 5 to 8 years. Do I choose high risk investment portfolio versus de-risked? Thanks. Really good question. I'll let you have that one.
Yeah. Okay, so DB scheme closure. I assume they paid you out a lump sum, or that DB scheme has been taken management by somebody else, so you'll still get some income in retirement, the guaranteed income. But you're asking about basically you're coming up to retirement, 5 to 8 years, and you're thinking, what's the right thing to do on the investment side of things? You know, do I go higher risk to get those gains so I can retire? Two things. I wouldn't go massive risk, and what I mean by massive risk is, you measure risk in pensions and investment portfolios by the level of equity you've got. So companies, stocks and shares, those are presumed your higher risk assets. Ultra high risk is 80% of equities in your portfolio plus, 80% plus. A more balanced approach is 50 to 60%. And then a cautious approach is 30 to 40%. General terms, we're talking general terms here to give you an idea. A lot of the workplace pension schemes, when you're nearing retirement, what they'll do is, it's called lifestyle investing. They will automatically rebalance your pension so that your equity holding is reduced. And so they're basically de-risking your pension as you get closer to retirement. That used to be a good thing because people were buying annuities, which was a guaranteed income in retirement. But annuity rates are awful right now. What most people are doing, and what is recommended, is that you keep your pension invested, working for you, and you take a withdrawal each month or each year. So you keep your money invested. If you've got a pension that is carrying out that lifestyle approach, so reducing the equity as you get to retirement, you will have assets left in your pension that aren't actually earning a lot for you. And so you'll probably run out of money. So I wouldn't go really high risk, but what I'm saying is I would carry some equity risk in there. And it depends on your scenario, but I wouldn't go 80%. I wouldn't go 70%. I'd probably be looking at 50 to 60% in equities. That's where I'd be positioned. But without actually speaking to you and finding out your whole scenario, I couldn't actually tell you do this. assets?
Yeah, and I think that was a really good question, because I think a lot of people, the planning is really, really important, and understanding what income you need versus what you have coming, and if there's a shortfall or not, and how big that shortfall is. Because when you're speaking with someone like Terry, or someone, if you're trying to look at it from a planning point of view, you have to have a method or a process that will take you from where you are right now with your shortfall to where you want to be in a safe manner. Like when you're investing, it's all about trying to manage your downside risk, right? So you need to have that clear indication and idea of, right, is there a shortfall? What is the shortfall? Then creating a plan that's going to get you there, and being as realistic as possible in terms of, what risks you are able to take, what risks you're not willing to take, and the reality of, okay, do you need to change? Some people may be able to have that analysis and do that completely on their own. Some people will need help, and that's where the values of financial advisors like Terry do come in, because you can have a professional eye over guiding you on the process and actually building a robust plan that can be stress tested to ensure that you have the greatest degree of an opportunity to get to that target without missing it. And this is retirement that we're talking about here. It's you spend your life working. Like my dad, I always talk about him when I talk about pension, because I have a fear of when I get to retirement, not having enough money like my dad, and having to work well into my 60s, late 60s, and dying having to work. Nobody wants to be in that situation. And whilst it might sound like these are really tough choices to be made, we have to make those tough choices, because we have to do it in aid for the future. So really good question there. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so here we go. So I'm 47, own my own business. No outgoings apart from usual utility bills. I have 500k in the bank gathering dust. I was wondering, at what age could I retire?
I'm just going to share my screen
Mhm.
because you've alluded to something there. I just want to show you the distressful power of inflation. So let's £200,000, inflation at 2%. At the age of 68, that £200,000 is now worth 117,000. So that's the power of inflation. It's the cancer of money. That's how it's described. And I point that out now because of the question. Have £500,000 in the bank gathering dust, rightly said. It's not just gathering dust, it's being eroded by inflation. When would you be able to retire? You're age 47 now. Well, you can see that if you leave that money sitting where it is, it'll just inflation will erode it. So you'll be getting further and further away from your retirement if you don't do anything with it. You're a business owner, so there's probably a lot of tax efficient ways you could invest that money, and you don't have to invest all of it. But if you're a business owner, you can be putting pension contributions into a personal pension, and that it saves you corporation tax. It also saves you income tax if you're drawing that money out of the business, or dividend tax. Dividend tax if you're taking your money out as dividends. You can actually go back 3 years into unused pension allowances. So you could potentially, you've got £40,000 each year you can put into a pension. Potentially in 1 year you could put in £160,000 in 1 year, because you can go back to 3 years for unused pension allowances. You're in a very good position if that is your scenario at 47, £500,000. My advice is do something with it. Keeping that level of cash now is just a problem. It's a good problem to have, but if you fast forward 10 years and you haven't done anything with it, you will probably be pulling your hair out. That would be my advice. There's lots of tax efficient ways you could use to invest that money, especially that you're a business owner. There's more option for business owners to save on taxes. Just because you're a business owner, you take on more risk, so the government allows you to do certain things that somebody who is employed doesn't have the
Yeah.
option to do. So it's worth exploring. Don't leave it in cash, I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Make sure you got the money working for you. That's the most
Yes.
important thing. I'm just going to fast track one question from one of my members here, Danny. Let me just see if I can find him on here and pull this up. Give me 1 second. Danny. Here we go. So he's asking here, what are the chances that there will be a state pension in 2046?
Good question. I can't answer it, but what are the chances? I can't tell you if it's a yes or no. If we don't have a state pension, then it'll be chaos. We will just have elderly dying in the streets. When we become a third world country, I don't think that is going to happen. I'm not never say never. I hope it's never. What will probably happen, there will be a state pension. This is my view. But as we've seen recently, the age where you get your state pension will increase. So it's now at 68 for most people. It used to be 65, 66, and it keeps rising. The reason it keeps rising is because people are living longer. Now, if people are living longer, the government assumes that we are healthier and we're able to work longer. There's all sorts of problems there. Will there be enough jobs? Will technology erode the jobs that we have in different sectors? These questions have been around since before the Second World War. Einstein used to write to US presidents telling them that jobs will run out and we'll need a universal salary for everybody. That hasn't happened in the UK. We have universal benefits, but it's not enough to keep anybody sustainable for long. Will there be a state pension in 2046? I believe the answer is yes, but the age of where you can actually get your hands on it will be greater. It'll be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good answer there, Terry. Cheers for that. I wouldn't say I'm a skeptic, but we know that there is an onus that auto enrollment has introduced for people to really take ownership of their own pension provisions, and some people who are skeptical will say that may be a little hoodwink to the fact that it may not be available, but we don't know what is down the track. But I always say to people, don't rely on it, have it as a nice to have cherry on top of the cake, essentially. I'm just looking for there's a question on here that is a really good question. This is from Rob. My wife is 50, has no pension, as not working, but has 24 years national insurance contributions. Is it worth paying for extra years NI contributions? I will have a DB teacher's pension in 5 years, 30 years plus full NI.
That's really interesting scenario. So a DB teacher's pension is fantastic. I think Rob will agree. He can actually log on and see his forecast on the teacher's website. So he will know what he will be getting each year as a guaranteed income. That's what a DB pension is, a guaranteed income each year. The problem is, and hope this doesn't happen, but it does happen, if Rob was to die, what provisions does his wife have? The scheme, I believe, and he will have to check this, will pay a spouse a pension amount for so many years. I think it's 5 or 10 years, and it's probably about half the amount. So they reduce the pension they'll be paying you, and they would give your spouse half of it for 5 to 10 years. But check the detail on that. If that amount is enough for your wife to live on, then there's no point in you paying national insurance contributions to get that money, to get the state pension for your wife. But if it's not, then you need to speak to HMRC and see how much it would be for your wife to top up those national insurance contributions for her to get a state pension. To increase her state pension, because she will have a state pension. It's just whether or not you want to increase it. Now, if they turn around to you and say it's £8,000 to pay, but your wife's state pension will increase by, I don't know, let's pick a number, £1,000 a year. If you do that, then it means that for that to pay off, your wife will have to receive 8 years of state pension for it to pay off, and then you will be in the money, in the green. It depends on how much it is. It depends on how much it is and how much the increase will be. How many years will it take for you to get that additional NI contribution back? See, there's a lot of moving factors there. He needs to check his DB scheme and what it pays to the spouse upon death, because that's the risk that, Rob, unfortunately dies and that DB pension disappears. So
Absolutely.
yeah, there's a lot of moving things there.
Perfect. Cheers for that, Terry. There is just a comment here, and this is one I think that will be going through many people's minds. And £1,000 a month is a bit unrealistic for most if you're employed, considering most people are in the 20 to 25 income bracket. And I guess, look, this is where we don't make up the numbers, but these are what the numbers are. This is where the importance of starting early is stressed even more. If you're not paying into a pension and you're not thinking about retirement now, these numbers just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if they're unrealistic, that's the way the world works. It's so important to get started now. The only thing that we can do is highlight what you need to know now so that you know what you need to do now. Because the worst thing that you want is, like my dad, to turn up at 58, be like, oh, I want to retire, no money, then realize you've only got 5 years to go and that £1,000 is now £3,000 and you've lost time. Time is your biggest asset whenever you're looking at investing into the market. Time is your biggest asset. And unfortunately, we all have limited time, even though time is finite. So yes, these numbers may be really, really big numbers. But as I say a lot of the time in my video, this is where you need to put on your big boy pants, big girl pants, and really get your head in the game and start to look at money for what it is, a tool to deliver the life that you want. That's why my slogan is, money is a tool, life is for living. We need to be more cognizant of this kind of stuff, because the sooner we're able to move and make decisions towards these kind of things, the whole lot easier it's going to be. And it might mean we need to make decisions where we're sacrificing certain things now in lieu for the future. But what's the alternative? We live life now, YOLO, like no care in the world, only to get to a point where we no longer have the energy to generate income. We no longer have the energy to generate, to work, to then find out we don't have enough money to actually give us the retirement that we want, having spent all of this time working in the first place. So the numbers are harsh, and I think the numbers need to be taken for what they are. It has to be a reality check for many people. Starting early is so important. Let me just find another one here. Okay, this is a really good question, and this is one that I actually kind of wanted to ask and allude to a bit earlier on. So, how do pension pots count in calculation entitlement for social care / residential care fees? Benefits of saving for pension versus disbenefit of giving it all to pay for care. So this is something we obviously speak a lot about, Terry, long-term care and the need potentially for that as you get older, because care homes are not cheap, especially if you want to go into a decent one where you actually looked after. These things cost thousands of pounds per week. So this is a great question.
Yeah, so let me just get a hold of the question. So, hey, pension pots can. So, are we saying here? Right. So if we need residential care fees, how does a pension work to help with that? First of all, well, from your pension, you take a withdrawal monthly, weekly, yearly. That's how it works, and your money is still invested and working for you. And if you've got a professional behind you, they will calculate how much realistically you can be withdrawing each year or each month to take care of those care fees. I think the second part of the question there is it better to put money into a pension, or is it better to save for care fees? Is that right? Am I reading that right, Peter?
Yeah, I think they're trying to ask the question around the entitlement for social care. So I think what they're trying to ask here is do your pension pots work into the calculation for social care if you need
Oh, I do
long term care
apologize.
in a
Yeah,
care
yeah,
home?
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. Um, they do. They do. They do. So it's assets. When it comes to social care calculations, they will look at your assets. They will look at money that you've got in the bank. When it comes to pension, um, if you need social care funding from the government, and you can't access your pension because you're not old enough yet, they even may actually say to you, well, actually, we're allowing you to access your pension earlier because you need money to care for yourself. So they do count that. It's an asset that you have. But I wouldn't say don't save because you won't get social care help. Because what will happen is if that pension does run out, then the social care funding will kick in. So, and hopefully you don't need social care. It may happen, it may not, but hopefully if you're saving, then you will have enough money that you'll never need the government's help. That's what you should be aiming for.
Hmm.
If you can. But yes, they do look at your pension. They look at all your assets. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. There's a question here from Michael. Hi, would you recommend putting a lump sum into a pension, then pay tax, or in a stocks and shares ISA?
How would you put a lump sum into pension and pay tax? Okay, so I think the question here is put money into a pension or put money into an ISA. And I'll presume that both will be invested in stocks and shares. So same
Hmm.
investment solution, because you can do that. There's no reason why you can't have the same investment solution in either pension or ISA. Um, Okay, put it quite simply. Your ISA, you don't get the tax reliefs when you put money into it. So the government doesn't give you 20% tax relief, or if you're a higher rate taxpayer, doesn't give you 40% tax relief. So you lose out there. So the pension is good because you get the tax relief. Okay, so that's one thing. The ISA is good because when you draw money from the ISA, you don't pay income tax on it. It's not subject to any income tax, so that's great. So on the way out, ISAs are good. On pensions, you are subject to income tax. It's in your income tax calculations when you draw money out. So pension is great for long-term planning because you can't touch it. That's the whole point of it. It's for the future. When you get to retirement, you can draw out 25% of the pension lump sum tax-free. So that tax-free cash can be used to pay off your mortgage, can be to do anything you want. It's 25% tax-free, and you've had tax relief on the way in. So the tax benefits of a pension are greater. The ISA is good if you want it before you retire, because you can access it before retirement age. So the ISA is good as well, but the pension is better. The pension is also better because it's free from inheritance tax as well.
Hmm.
So you can
Yeah.
pass that on to the next generation free of inheritance tax. You can't do that with an ISA. So
Yeah.
there's lots of different benefits. I always opt for pension first if I need it to when I retire. If it's for
Yeah.
long-term planning, pension is definitely better.
Yeah. And a couple of other things in there as well. Terry already alluded to the fact that you can go back 3 years with pensions. You can't do that with an ISA. And also the annual amount that you can contribute into a pension is greater at 40,000 versus 20,000 within an ISA as well. So I think it's really important to take stock of your own personal situation and try to decipher which would be the best route for you based on everything that you've just heard. So cheers for that, Michael. All right. Okay. So we're coming up on the hour mark right now. There's quite a few questions that are still left. Are you okay for time, Terry?
I am, yes. Just as long as you are, Peter. That's
Okay. Yep. That's fine.
yeah.
By the way, guys, if you do have a particular questions, you can fast track with the super chat. I'll bring it up to the top. We'll try and get through as many of these as possible. But I am conscious of time as well. So let's just have a look and see what else we have here, question wise. Okay, there is a really good question on here. It should be relatively simple, actually, and a straightforward question. This is from Jason. So Jason is asking: should small pension pots be grouped into one pot? I guess is what he's alluding to there. So should you consolidation? Is it worthwhile doing?
It is. They all need to be analysed. This is what we do. We analyse every single pension pot. We get this a lot. We have people with 6, 7 pensions, and we analyse each one. Some of them, we say, leave them where they are, because some pension schemes have benefits. Some pension schemes say you can draw out 32% of the pension pot at retirement tax-free, as opposed to the normal 25%. So in pension pots like that, we say, well, keep them. And there's all different scenarios. But in general terms, yes, you should group them together, because you should have one objective. And what I mean by that is your objective from your pension is so it funds your retirement. If you've got various different pensions and they're all doing different things, your question should be, well, why are they doing different things? I've only got one objective. My objective is to retire comfortably. So I've got one objective, but I've got several different pension pots working in different ways. Well, it's scattered. The approach is too scattered. You should be focused. It should be a focused approach to get to your objective. That's not to say the small pensions, the various ones, aren't good. It just means that why aren't all of them in one place doing the same thing to get you to your objective?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about barbell approach. Well, I've got this money and it's high risk, and then I've got this money and it's cautious. But if it's your pension, why would you have two different scenarios? It should be together. Reduce that high risk one, up that cautious risk one, and get them working to one objective. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Cheers, Terry. I'm just looking through. There is a question here from Leo, which is a good one. With your experience, how accurate are these pension calculators at forecasting your retirement pot? The figures I get compared to the growth of my fund over the last 12 years don't look realistic.
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of the times when I look at workplace pensions and I'm reviewing them, they give you like the worst case scenario of growth, and then the best case scenario, and then they give you the average, and they're so far apart. They're so far apart, and at the end of it, they give you an income that you will be getting annually as well. And so you sit there and you think, hang on a minute. So my pension pot was growing, and I thought I'd get a pot of money at the end. And now you're telling me what income it will provide as well. But they're giving you annuity rates if you were to go and buy an annuity. Now, annuity rates are terrible, as I said. I wouldn't recommend them in the current climate, buying an annuity. So I can see why Leo is confused. I think, when looking at these forecasts, they are very cautious in their forecasts. And on top of that, they're predicting that you will buy an annuity, where I wouldn't think for 90% of people that is not a good option.
Appropriate, yeah.
So it doesn't really give you a good figure. If I were you, a better scenario would be to say, what's my pension pot going to be at the end of when I start retiring? So what's the value? I will be drawing 5% of that value each year, and hopefully that will remain intact, that pension pot. If that 5% that you calculate isn't enough, then it means that your pension pot won't be enough at the end of it. It's very hard to tell you the exact figure without actually seeing it in person, and no one can tell you the exact figure. It's all estimates based on knowledge and historic forecasts.
Yeah. And I think, just to add on to that as well, it's really important to understand and to acknowledge that, your numbers are going to be personal to you. So when we talk about 5% being a safe withdrawal limit, the question is it safe for you? If you have a small pension pot and you're taking 5%, you'll quickly understand that actually your money's not going to last you for too long. And then that's when you get into, well, how much money do you need in retirement? And that leads back to the original question that we're asking here, that do you have enough in your pension pot to begin with? This is where things like the cash flow modeling that Terry has shared a bit earlier on really helps to add value to your picture, because at least you'll be able to sit down with the foresight of knowing, right, if I do this, I'm going to run out of money here. So this is what I need to do to make sure that I can extend the length of time that my income is going to be available for. And I think this is where it's really, really important that if you don't know how to do it yourself, to seek help so that you can make the best decision possible for you. Right, let's have a look at another one. All right, I'm sorry, guys. Bear me 1 second. I think that there's a comment on here, which is kind of a question. Actually, is it a question? There's something around here about pensions and mortgages. I think from property, for example. So, actually, can you speak on that a little bit? So, a lot of people obviously they have a look at property income. Income from rental properties, so on and so forth, commercial properties, that kind of stuff, versus the pension. What are your views on that? What are the key things for people to consider for that?
Yeah, I get clients all the time with property portfolios, and they tell me that their rental properties are yielding more money. I get a lot of people with HMOs and social housing as well, where they're getting increased rents from councils and things like that. So, I mean, are you asking me what's better or what my experience is, really?
What your experience is really, because I know that many people will say, well, actually, I prefer to have it in property or versus a pension. What have you found with your experience having speaking to clients?
Property can be great, and some people who know how to manage property correctly have done very well. And these are my clients that I'm referring to. There's a lot of cost in property that people don't talk about, and then when we actually put those into the cash flow forecasts, then the rental income that they've been telling me that they're getting soon dwindles. I get clients telling me they're getting 12% on a rental property, and then when we put all the costs in, they're coming out with 6, which isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not what they were telling me and what they thought they would get. And this is all well and good to say all this. Oh yes, I'm getting this and I'm getting this. But if it's not reality, then it will show in retirement. It will come
Mm-hmm.
to fruition. Yeah, as I said, property has been really good as long as you know how to manage them and you don't overstretch and you don't spread yourself too thinly. I've seen people buy a property, rent it out, then remortgage it, and then go and buy another property. And they do this 5 or 6 times, and everything's going great. And then 1 or 2 properties have no tenants.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, that's fine. And then we get a recession, and property prices fall. They have to pay back mortgages, and then they're ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And it can happen. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. And from very wealthy people, presumably, wealthy people all of a sudden lose 5, 6, 10 properties, and they're going back to employment. So just don't spread yourself too thinly is one thing with property. It can be a very good investment, and it is a very good investment. You don't get the tax reliefs that you get with pensions. And don't forget that in pensions, you can invest in property funds as well. So you can invest in property within your pension. With commercial property, if you're a business owner, you can buy your commercial property in a pension as well. And there's great tax saving, things you can do there. So you can actually, in that scenario, you can use both the pension tax reliefs and the savings with the commercial property. It's a really good planning exercise, actually. So that's
Absolutely.
my experience.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because you can actually get your commercial audit actually being an income generating asset as well within that pension. So it helps with that growth of it as well. All right, guys. So let's have a look at a few more questions before we move on to that one. Let's get those likes up. There's 111 on there at the moment. There's still 183 of you on here. So let's see if we can get that to 130. That will help me massively. Let's have a look for the next question. Bear me 1 second. Okay, so there is a question here from Paul. I have a SIP and I'm about to start with a new employer. Should I transfer the SIP funds into the new employer scheme? Thank you.
It depends. If you look at the new employer scheme and you think the investments are good and the options are good and the charges are good, then yes, transfer it if you like what you see. If you don't like what you see, you have to weigh up, is the existing pension scheme that you've got from your old employer, can you leave it in there, and is it worthwhile leaving it in there? It depends on many factors. What are you going to invest the pensions into? How many options do you have with each pension scheme? The fees as well, that's a big one. But if you're happy with the new pension scheme and the investments that go with it and the fees, yes, transfer it. Going back to my previous answer for another question, have your pension part working in one scenario, to get to one's objective.
Absolutely, absolutely. Bear me 1 second. There was a super chat in there. I'm just going to see if there's a question attached to it. Right. Let me just get to this very, very quickly and see, is there a question attached to this here? I didn't get a CETV. My DB to, all right, I didn't get a CETV for your DB to DC. It's currently sat there earning only inflation where I pay into the DC scheme. I'm leaning towards drawing the DB annuity now whilst I work, aware DB penalties, but any tax dodges. So I'm not sure of the exact question there, but I'm guessing maybe he wants a little bit of commentary around DB annuities. Are there any other? Would it be best to take out a DB annuity, or is it worthwhile shopping around in this instance, Terry?
I think it was most DB pension schemes, which I think is what we're talking about here, to defined benefit pension scheme. It's not an annuity that you get, but it is sometimes
It's good.
described as
Yeah.
an annuity. You don't go and purchase an annuity. The pension scheme tells you this is the income that you will be getting in retirement. But it is sometimes described as an annuity, so you don't have to buy one. I think there's another question come through. Tax increase while taking annuity and working. Yeah. So it sounds like this person will still be working and drawing the DB pension. So the
Hmm.
income from that DB pension will be coming to them as well. That's an
Hmm.
option whilst working. So yeah, you'll be getting taxed on the DB income that's coming out and your employment income as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. Is it only earning inflation? Well, yes, it's increasing with inflation, but it's guaranteed income
Hmm.
that you're getting. So don't forget that that's really powerful when it comes to retirement. There's no investment risk. You're just getting it. You're getting the income come out. There are DB penalties, yeah. For drawing, it's difficult to know because there's different levels of how much you can draw from a DB pension and then still work and all the taxes involved. The other side of it is, if he's still in employment, is he going to still be paying into his DC pension, which he says, I think there,
Hmm.
um, you need to be aware there. Are you allowed? Are you allowed to continue to pay into that pension whilst you draw from the DB pension? It depends on the DB pension scheme and the DC pension scheme. If you're in employment, which it sounds like you are, you should be speaking to somebody there and clarifying with them what's going on with the pension schemes. There's a lot there. It's very difficult to give an answer here. DB pensions are very complicated, and there's a lot, and there's reasons why. There's so many different rules. Each scheme is different. I'm sorry, I couldn't be any more help on that one. I'd really need to have a look at it, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
I mean, if you wanted to reach out to Terry, what we'll do is in the show notes to this, we'll leave an email address for Terry. If you have a chat with him, he doesn't charge for like a initial conversation and stuff like that. He can probably give you a bit more information there. But yeah, DBs are quite complex with how they actually work. And if you do have one, happy days. I wish I had one, but I don't. And I think a lot of people, when they hear what a DB is, they wish that they had one. But long gone are those days. So it's really important that you're able to get a balance between what you're doing and your circumstances. But Terry can definitely give you a little bit of advice on that, and I'll leave his contact details in the show notes once this is uploaded afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look. There is this one as well. I have a pension pot around 42,000 invested in 100% US equities. I'm turning 50 and I'd like to invest in an ISA or fund / ETF. What is safe for me in proportion, shares versus bonds at Vanguard? Well, that's a difficult one to answer, but go for it, mate.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for that. Let me just gather my thoughts. Okay, who's invested 100%? Okay, let's just run through stuff. You've got your pension pot. It's invested 100% US equities. That for me is a red flag right there. That's full risk. You've full equities in your pension pot. Okay, so you're taking on the full market risk. And not only are you taking on the full market risk, you're taking on the full US risk.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not spreading your investments around geographically. You know that you're missing out on opportunities. Asia, Europe, UK. I know a lot of people look at economies and like the UK and think, oh, Brexit's happening and this and that. The economy is not going to do well. But don't forget that investment markets aren't always linked to the economy of that country. And I'll explain. The UK FTSE 100 has a lot of oil stocks in it. It has a lot of international earners, so it doesn't always react to what's happening in the UK. So all I'm saying is 100% in US equities is you've probably done really well recently. And the reasons you've probably done really well is those tech firms that are in the US. The top four, they've done amazingly. Joe Biden, new president, is going after those companies for taxes. He's increasing taxes. He's increasing regulation. Those good times for those stocks will probably start to see them slow down. Probably. I'm not telling you. I'm not giving you advice, but that's a bit of a risk having 100% in US equities. The other thing is you're turning 50 and you'd like to invest in an ISA or funds ETF. Your ISA is the most tax efficient way of investing. They give you £20,000 a year allowance for a reason, because it's got a lot of benefits. If you invest into an ISA, you can still invest into a fund or an ETF within the ISA. It's just the ISA is a tax wrapper, and within that tax wrapper, you can invest within that tax wrapper. So you can choose your fund, you can choose your ETFs. So why not use the ISA allowance to do that? Proportion of shares versus bonds at Vanguard. It depends on your risk and your assets. It depends on your whole situation. For your age as well, 100% in equities is a no-no. 80% in equities may be appropriate for you. I don't know your wealth. If you've got a lot of wealth in the background, it may well be that you can take this risk. Realistically, on average, you should be around 60% in equities, 60, 65 at a push. The bonds and the other assets that you can invest in your portfolios, they should be there as insurances for when we get the next recession, and we will have another recession. That is a guarantee.
Yeah, and I think it's worthwhile just bearing in mind within Vanguard, if you're looking at index funds and ETFs, a lot of them don't have any bond provisions at all, unless you're looking at some of their blended options or lifestyle strategies, for example, or the retirement target fund. So your selection needs to be right. But I would agree with Terry, like 100% equity exposure into the US, pretty that's going for it, mate, big time. And like, it's all very well and good speculating that you can make so much money. This is the problem with social media these days, but they never explain the downside. If, you know, tech stocks or the market in general in the United States just crash tomorrow, you'll be left holding the bag. And then it will be a case of, right, you now need to work even harder and chase your losses to make up whatever you lose with such a constrained time frame, because we don't know when you want to retire. If you might want to retire in 10 years time, you might want to retire in 8 years time, depending on what your timeline. You need to consider that as well in terms of the level of risk that you should be taking. This is all about the risk that you're able to take, not necessarily the risk that you're willing to take as an investor. Those two things go hand in hand. So yeah, cheers for that. All right, okay, so I'm conscious of time. Terry, let's give this 10 more minutes. See if we can get maybe through another 2 or 3 questions.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So this is Paul. Great live chat, guys. I'm 43, self-employed with no pensions. I recently bought a buy-to-let, which will be paid off in 15 years. Is a pension worthwhile with no employer, or continue with buy-to-lets? Good one.
Okay. You're self-employed. Okay. Well, there's tax benefits to investing into a pension. You get the tax relief. So if whatever you're paying, 20% or 40%, whatever you put into a pension, you'll get that rate of tax relief, 20% or 40%. So it's up to you. If you want the tax savings now, and they will grow year on year, you'll have your investments growing with that tax relief added each year as you put your contributions into a pension. Buy-to-lets are great as well. Property is a good investment if it's managed well, as I said before. Just things to note, it depends on your family life as well. Your buy-to-lets, are you buying them in a company? If you are, then that will help mitigate inheritance tax, because you can probably pass that on to your loved ones when you pass. I hope it's not soon. I'm just saying, it happens. With a pension, you can pass on your pension to the next, succession planning, and to the next generation, free of inheritance tax. There are some rules around it, but it's generally free. So it just depends. It depends what you're thinking of. You've got to weigh up the benefits of both and the disadvantages of both. A lot of people that invest in property, they don't understand pensions enough. And one thing that, if you have bought your buy-to-lets in a property, in a company, you could actually make company contributions to a pension and save on corporation tax and income tax or dividend tax. So you probably have many options that need to be considered. So there's many options. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I would just add to that and just, again, go back to the importance of actually having a plan. Have you thought about what income you're going to need? Yes, the property is going to give you a rental yield. And if you own the property outright because it's been paid down fully in 15 years' time, yes, that's going to give you rental income. So income in your pocket, which you can use for, retirement purposes, for income purposes. But what's your tax position first and foremost? Is it within a company like Terry has already alluded to there? But what does that actually say for your wider picture? If it's one property that you have, what's the rental? If it's giving you 5K a year, okay, that's fantastic. That can give you them, but you've got to take into consideration the cost, upkeep, that kind of stuff, downtime if you don't have tenants in there. All these things kind of come into focus. The point is, do you have a plan, and does that actually fit and do a job within your plan? That's the big thing to really consider, because if in your overall plan, you find that actually the cost of a property, or the risk of maybe property prices falling or not actually having a tenant in there, outweighs because you don't have enough resources elsewhere to cover those costs, then it becomes counterintuitive. So does it fit within your plan? Does it fit within what you feel you're going to need when you retire? So what is that number? Is it 20 grand a year, 30 grand a year, 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year? If it's 50 grand a year, 5 grand a year is a little bit. It's not much. So, what benefit does it actually add to your plan? And that's the bit that people often miss. What is your number? What is your number? 50 grand a year is a lot of money to generate in pension income. Very different to 20,000. You have to do different things at different levels. So one thing to definitely remember, and that will be my challenge back to everyone on this on this live right now, please remember, what is your number? You have to ask yourself that. You cannot start on a journey if you don't know where you're planning to go to. That's the whole point, right? You can't go from A to B without knowing where your B is. Your B could be in the moon, for example, but you still need to find a way to actually get there. Bear me 1 second. There is okay. Thank you for that, Silk. There for that extra super chat. Really do appreciate it. Thank you. Let me see if I can find another question on here. Bear me 1 second. Where was I? There are so many. There are some questions on here that seem incomplete, so I'm trying to kind of like get through them, but I'm not sure what the core question is. There is one from Andy, for example. I'm not really too sure if you're still on here, Andy, but can you just provide some clarity for this? You're paying into a private pension, and company pension. That's a question mark. Whether you should do both, I imagine, or merge into one and pay once. So, okay, so I kind of get a gist of that now. Is it worthwhile paying into private pension and a company pension, or is it worthwhile merging them into both? Private pension is 60K, performed well, and company pension is 3K. I'm 50. Okay, so is it worthwhile combining those two?
Okay, right. I think the first question is pay into a private pension and company pension, so do both. Right. If you are employed, the company pension can be quite tax efficient because it's the way it's paid. So if you were to pay into a private pension, what happens is you get your money from your employer, you've been taxed, you've paid your income tax, you've paid your national insurance, you've paid all your taxes. Then you use your money and you pay into a private pension. The government will give you your tax relief, 20% or 40%. Okay. Some employers pay into the company pension via what's called salary sacrifice. So if you pay into the company pension, you don't get that money into your bank account. It goes straight from the employer into your company pension. By doing that, you save on income tax, but what you also save is national insurance as well. National insurance at 13.8%, okay, in most cases. So if you can pay into the company pension, and they're doing it through this salary sacrifice method, it's more tax efficient. But what you can then do is allow the company pension to grow, and then you can transfer parts of your company pension into your private pension, but make sure that the payments are coming from your employer, if you see what I mean, because it's more tax efficient. So get the benefit of that saving on the national insurance through that method. And then depending on your scheme, you could transfer it to your private pension afterwards. But it depends on the company scheme, because some company schemes don't allow transfers out.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay, one more question, and this is slightly different. So this is from Nadia. Would you recommend to start a pension for my children? I assume they won't get state pension, and they may need all compound interest they can get.
Okay, if you can afford to, great, do it. I always believe look after yourself first. Make sure you're in a good position, so you're in a position to help others around you when they need it. So make sure that you're sorting yourself out for your retirement before you start your children's. So that's number one. A pension for your children, yeah, it's fantastic, because it depends how old your children are. But if they're 5 or 6, let's say, you can start a child's pension at the age of 0. As soon as they're born, you can start a pension for them. They won't be able to access it until 57 with current laws, but that's a good thing, because that means it'll grow for 57 years. You can, at the moment, the allowance is 2,880 that you can put into a child's pension. The government gives tax relief on that, so that contribution becomes 3,600. So if you can put just one in and let that grow for the next 50 years, they'll probably have a pension pot of around, I don't know, without doing the calculation, maybe 30, 40,000.
You carry on, and I'll see if I can find a rough calculation.
Okay, so that's 3,600, yeah, for 50 years. But yes, if you can afford that, do it. It's great, because you're giving them a really good chance of building money up, and you get the tax relief as well. And The other thing is, when I sit down with clients, they don't want to gift money to their children when they're 18. They don't trust that they're adult enough. The good thing here is, if you're planning for their retirement, you're saying to your children, I've guaranteed your retirement, a healthy retirement. It's up to you now to go and work and do whatever you want to do in the years before retirement. You're giving them more freedom, because they won't have to worry about retirement if you can put enough away for them now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
A calculation on that over 57 years, and just assuming, say, a 5% average return on the markets will turn that 3,600 to 58,000 pounds potentially. So it does mean a lot. And if you're able to do that consistently every year for them for a period of time, that really does give them a really big head start. So, compound interest is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right, guys. I'm conscious of your time, Terry. I know that it is now 11 o'clock. We've not been able to get through all of the questions, guys, but as always, we really do appreciate you spending the time here with us. And I know that there are 177 of you still on here. Let me just check the like count, because that's one way you can definitely support the channel. Believe it or not, this kind of stuff, when we put time into this, it really does take effort to organize this kind of stuff. So things like the super chats, they really do help, just to kind of make the effort that goes into planning these kind of things, and Terry's time also worthwhile as well. So we do appreciate the super chats that have come through this evening. If you do want a super chat, it is literally down there. If you want to buy us a coffee or a beer, there is a link in the description as well. If you want Terry back, please do let me know in the comments, because I'm sure Terry will be more than happy to spend a little bit more time with us. But what I would say is, if you have listened to any of this evening, and you're in your 40s and your 50s, and you just want the ability to actually just speak to somebody, just to get the bearings of whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, then definitely try consider reaching out to Terry. I will leave his contact details in the show notes. But Terry, I mean, how does your service actually work? Because you don't charge people for a coffee, for initial conversation, and so forth, do you?
No. We can have a chat. It's absolutely free. We can just work through your scenario, and we can just have an initial chat. That's it. We can, everyone's scenario is different. There's so many moving factors to do with their lives and their ambitions. We can just have a chat, and 9 times out of 10, it's just a bit of guidance and saying, you're doing the right thing. I would increase this here. I would use your ISA allowance. I'd increase the pension here. And then you set on your way, really. So yeah, just happy to have a chat with people. So please, get in touch.
Absolutely. And I just have to reiterate this as well. I've been doing, this is my second year on YouTube, and I've been in this for a very long time. I know that there is always this eagerness to take our own destiny into our own hands, which we need to, but there are certain things that should not be taken lightly. And retirement is one of them. You only get one retirement. You only have one opportunity to get it right across your career. If you fumble, if you make a mistake, you have to deal with that. So the question is, do you want a little bit of help to guide you, or do you feel comfortable and confident enough to do it on your own? Many people may say, actually, you know what? I'm okay, Pete. I could definitely go off and do this on my own. Absolutely. But if you're not and you need guidance, definitely go and seek the help. There's lots of information, obviously, here on YouTube, so on and so forth. But speaking with someone to get guidance, those conversations are really valuable. The amount of you that are still tuned into this at 11 o'clock on a Sunday evening says it all. This is a topic that needs to be spoken about, that garners a lot of interest. And I can only encourage you, have a conversation. But as always, I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I will be doing more live sessions like this. There's a couple of things that I've got in the pipeline right now. On Friday, yesterday, sorry. I want to do live sessions where people can actually pop up on the screen like Terry, ask questions, we can have a conversation. That will become a regular theme on the channel. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to be doing a Saturday marathon as well. So we're going to be talking about investing, crypto, Forex, just general money management, property, so on and so forth. That will be coming down the line. It's going to be in June, probably the first or second weekend of June. So also watch out for that. It will likely be on a Saturday during the day or maybe a Sunday during the day. We're talking probably a 4 or 5 hour stream. So there will be lots of topics that we're going to be talking about, lots of people coming in to speak, and hopefully engage in conversation. But guys, as always, thank you so much. Have a good evening. I've got a podcast to record and, well, I've got a podcast to edit for tomorrow. So I'm going to get off. But thank you guys. Appreciate it.